Hello, and welcome to the Street Aesthete channel. This is the show where we explore street view coverage of a noteworthy location, looking out for beautiful architecture and stunning scenery while I amuse myself by remarking on what we see. Today we're going to be visiting a town in the west of the Czech Republic called Karlovy Vary. You might also have heard of this place by its German name, which is Carlsbad, and as you can see we're rather close to the German border here. It is a spa town and it boasts thermal hot springs. It was founded in the 14th century by the then Roman Emperor Charles IV, hence Karlovy, Charles Baths, I think it would be the English name for the town, and we can think of it as the Czech equivalent of some of the English spa towns, the Victorian tourist towns like Bath in the west of England or Leamington Spa. It became a very popular tourist destination with the European aristocracy during the 19th century, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so we're bound to find some stunning architecture here. And I think what we're going to do, as usual, is we're just going to drop in at the far end of the town and walk into the centre. So we'll start just on this bridge here, and I think we'll probably pop onto the main road here, but just to give you a sense of the landscape that we're dealing with here. And we've got some very lovely spring coverage here, nice and sunny. Hopefully that's going to do justice to what I imagine will be some very beautiful buildings. And already we start to see, even on the outskirts, some great examples of 19th century architecture. Let's hop down onto the road here and take a closer look. Wonderful classical proportions here, and some interesting colours. More of the same here, although perhaps this looks a little bit newer, or maybe it's just that it has this rather ugly corrugated iron thing tacked onto the side that's fooling me. In any case, that will be the slip road coming off the large bridge we've just come from, so we'll continue. I think perhaps not along the riverfront, but maybe up the hill here. A few of the buildings in perhaps not the best state of repair, but keep in mind that we are not quite in the middle of the town yet, so we're just seeing an inkling of what is to come. I did spend a little bit of time looking at the map earlier, planning roughly what the route is going to be. Now this is the sort of scene that I was expecting to see. We've got some really wonderful buildings on both sides here, and as I hoped, we can see the sun hitting this one, really enhancing its colour and its beauty. This building looks as though it may have been at some point perhaps subject to de-stuckification. There was a lot of that happened in Berlin, which is not too far from here as a matter of fact. For whatever reason, the Germans felt that all of the ostentatious and opulent decoration on their buildings was unnecessary, and so they got rid of it. Fortunately, that doesn't appear to have happened everywhere in this town. As you can see, we've got lots of these really lovely Baroque style flower bouquet designs, these cornucopias with grapes. 1962, I'm rather surprised to see that, if I'm honest. I would have thought that this was quite a bit of an older building, but perhaps not. Perhaps even into the 60s, they were still building in the Czech Republic great architecture in the historical style. Or perhaps it was a renovation. Some fabulous balconies here, and it's really nice to see those actually from below, almost a forest of balcony pediments with their beautiful curled decorations from below. A very beautiful town indeed. and an interesting mixture of some of these more detached homes here, as opposed to what looks to be more like blocks of flats here. Yeah, I think we'll press on down the same road. That seems to have been something of an exclave of the main part of the town there. As we get into Little Land, a little bit of in-between before we penetrate into the real historic centre of Karlovy Vary here. And it looks as though we may well be approaching it. With this fabulously rounded turret here. Feast your eyes. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous building. A little bit less interesting over here. It would be worth, I would say, adding a bit of decoration to it to bring it in line with the facades opposite, which are just stunning, aren't they? I get the feeling this is going to be the sort of episode of Street Aesthete where I'm not going to be doing too much talking, I'm just going to be admiring the fabulous buildings. This is very special, isn't it? This double-layered balcony, and the sun is hitting it in just such a perfect way and interacting with the colour to make it look golden. Complemented beautifully by this pinkish red brick. Yeah, this is some real eye candy. Slightly less sunny, this coverage, but nonetheless we're getting a view from slightly further back. And I think we'll actually have to take a small detour over in this direction to see what we missed on this side. Absolutely glorious. A little bit less going on the other side of the river, it has to be said. Although, of course, what we have to imagine in the 19th century is that none of this would have been here. It would have been probably not fields, it probably would have been forested. So this would have been a very cosy, tucked away little oasis of wonderful buildings and spas in the middle of the forest. And so much beautiful detail on display here. Quite recently, actually, we saw a motif not unlike this on some buildings in France. It was in Béthune. Almost reminiscent of the centre of a flower. Very pretty indeed. This is practically overload. There's too much to look at here. Just take a step back again and get a great view of this. See if I can frame it beautifully. Yeah, really wonderful. The sides of the street leading you to the perpendicular street here with yet another perfectly placed, beautiful classical building. Just there, with the middle set of windows here lining up with the middle of the street. Well, almost. And this is just the kind of street that I like to see, a street with a tequila bar. But in any case, I don't think if I were to visit this town, I would have much time for being indoors drinking. I would want to drink in the sights of the streets. This is a street aesthete paradise. Anyway, we return to this roundabout and continue our journey. Okay, we are now, I think, starting to get into the real centre of the town, the real core. This looks like it might have perhaps been one of the really grand hotels of the past, of yesteryear. So many directions to go in. Do we want to head into the middle here, or do we want to continue along the river to get a good look at these buildings? I think this way is calling me more. Absolutely astonishing. What a wonderful row here. And just to cap it all off, the beautifully curled lamppost decoration there. Just scan across to get a good look at it all. If I stopped to comment on every feature we saw, I think we could be here for hours. So this is a slightly less verbose episode of Street Aesthete than usual. In places that have a much lower density of beautiful architecture, I tend to stop at each building and really take the time to explain what we're seeing and to try and articulate exactly what it is that makes it so beautiful. But on this occasion, I think we're just going to have to enjoy the pure sensuous experience of devouring these facades with our eyes. I've said it many times before, but just love the way that the sun is hitting these buildings. They got this at the perfect time of day. Which would appear to be something like 3 o'clock, if that clock can be trusted. Which, given that the sun is over here, roughly in the west, and it's April, probably seems about right. Which way? Do we go over here, or do we... I think we can perhaps... we've got a bit of a square here, in fact. We're going to ignore this concrete monstrosity over here. I mean, what were they thinking? That is vile. How could you put something like that alongside this? But we are going to ignore it and enjoy the 19th century architecture here. It's too much. It's too much to take in. Almost overwhelming. Can we get over there? We actually can't get much further onto the square, so we'll have to use photospheres and then jump back into the coverage. Unbelievable. I only found out about this place relatively recently, just from a photograph that I saw, and had to reverse image search it to find out where it was. And I had heard of Carlsbad, but I'd never heard of Karlovy Vary as a beautiful location to visit in the Czech Republic. In fact, although Prague is very famous for its architecture, I never really thought of the Czech Republic as being a place famous for its architecture. But clearly we're going to have to go back and visit a few more places in this region. We've got Pilsen to the south, home of the Pilsner Lager, and I believe there are a few other towns in the region that might be worth exploring. Okay, so a little bit less interesting here at the back. Let's get back over here. Oh, okay, not where I expected to be. And here we see the scourge of all modern cities, the graffiti, although fortunately we've seen very little of it so far, and hopefully we won't see very much of it at all. We return now to the obelisk, and I think we'll perhaps head in this direction for a little bit. It seems as though the best buildings are probably near the river, and although there's a lot to admire here, the middle of the town is perhaps slightly less distinguished. Nonetheless, what a fabulous scene, and I love the way that this tree-clad hill is peeking out over the top. It gives the whole town this wonderful sense of enclosure, of coziness, as if we are surrounded by hills and trees in a sort of a hidden valley. I really love the combination of different pastel colours here. It's an incredible street, it has to be said. If only we could still build things like this today. Well, as a matter of fact, we can still build things like this today. It's just that we have, for some reason, developed a different sort of design philosophy. We think much less in modern architecture about aesthetic beauty and much more about efficiency, function, and the cost of the building materials. Now, all of those considerations have their place when planning a building. There's no doubt about that. But they mustn't come at the expense of the aesthetic value of the edifice. Because we're very affected by our surroundings. Our mood, our emotional state, our quality of life can often be dictated by the things we see around us. And when we're surrounded by beautiful buildings like this, when you can see that the people who created them wanted to make an environment that lifted the human spirit, where thought and artistry has gone into making every little detail in the facade unique and beautiful, where we can see that architects and builders and the people commissioning the buildings were thinking about future generations, investing in the future of their country, of their families, of their fellow countrymen. we absorb some of that optimism. But when you plonk a big concrete nothing in the middle of it, the cohesion of the place can be ruined, even by just one ugly intrusion. And so it's very important, I think, in the same way that it's important to mend broken windows quickly so that you don't create an atmosphere where broken windows are permissible, it's important to spot buildings like this that just don't fit in with the aesthetic of the rest. And look, when we look over here, I can't by any means say that this one building is ruining the scene, but when we get to this junction here, it does start to feel that way. Now you could say, yes, that this colour is sort of matching this one here, and when you see it at a distance you could almost mistake it for something like this. But to my mind, the texture of the surface here is not at all in keeping with the patterning of the brick that we see elsewhere. A lick of paint, even a very thin facade of white stucco, and a few little ornamentations would really lift this scene if this building could be improved. But anyway, I'm griping. This is a beautiful town. This is an astonishing town, actually. I don't know if I've ever seen anything quite like it. In terms of the density of gorgeous buildings. It might actually not be a good idea for me to visit this place in person, because my own home in the London suburbs might start to seem rather dreary and unattractive in comparison. Although where I live does have its fair share of beautiful buildings, they are few and far between. Unlike this place, which is an absolute gem. Looks like perhaps a mosaic up here. The coverage isn't quite high fidelity enough for us to be able to tell for certain. And look at that, the beautiful pink blossom out. Perfect. Absolutely gorgeous. Looks as though we may be coming to the end of this area of very distinguished buildings, so maybe we'll just pop out over to the river and see if we're missing something on the riverfront over there. No, it looks as though it's perhaps more of a modern-built residential area. Of course, not everywhere in your town can be as opulent as those richly decorated 19th century hotels that we saw. You know, this is straddling the line. it just about gets away with it in my books because of the extra protruding bricks giving a little bit more texture here, which brings me on to something I wanted to mention actually about texture on a building facade. Our ancestors at one time lived in, of course, an environment that wasn't at all built up by the hands of man. It would have been a far more natural environment with many trees, perhaps the forest, perhaps grassland. But in such an environment, we often feel calm, perhaps because of an ancestral memory, perhaps because we are in touch with the natural world, with God's creation. And so when we create built environments like this one, it's important, I think, to try and in some way visually emulate some of what you might see in a forest or a natural environment. Hence, a building with lots of details and texture is often more beautiful to us because it can, in some ways, fool the eye into believing that it's looking at the highly densely textured visual landscape of a forest with its many vertical lines of tree trunks, branches, leaves. And indeed, the tops of buildings. This is why I'm often so interested in the tops of buildings. They are extremely important because they are the facsimile for us, the visual facsimile for the treetops, for the canopy. And so when we see a building that has a flat rectilinear top to it, it breaks the illusion for us that we could be looking at a natural form. Whereas having lots of ornamentation on top and differing ornamentation allows us to maintain the aesthetic illusion that we could well be in a forest in a natural environment. I'm aware that I'm taking us down a few of the same streets more than once, but I think they bear up to repeated scrutiny, if I'm honest. At least we're doing it in a different direction, so hopefully you're still getting a great visual tour of Karlovy Vary here. And we have returned, as I hoped we might, to this area of the town, because there was that particular sunny row over there that I wanted to take a better look at. So let's just jump over there to that point. Yes, this is the area. This is the part that I really wanted to explore further. And we went off in this direction, I think, but I definitely felt that we had missed out on this. I'm trying as best I can not to look over here at this. I mean, it is a great shame, isn't it, that you could be living in one of these gorgeous buildings here, and when you look out your window, you're presented with this. I mean, that is a terrible view, to be honest. Thinking about what I was saying about fooling the eye into thinking you were looking at a forest, here you've got an actual forest, and the skyline is just completely broken by this awful rectangle. Now, rectangles occur very seldom in nature. And not only that, but you've got the complete inorganic uniformity of the windows and shapes here. And On top of that even, you've then got this terrible concrete building. Now, I always think that concrete is ugly, but it's not even as though the shape of the building here is congruent with the rectangle behind it. We've got these rounded shapes and this almost sort of random arrangement of slightly higher parts here and a lower part here. Next to this, there's no cohesion to this, and the architects who built it should be fired for not having been able to take a cue from the surrounding architectural heritage. I mean, how could you look at this place and then think, yeah, you know what we need here? A big ugly rectangle. Amazing. Just amazing. A little bit more decoration could be done with here, but you know what, I don't mind this half as much as the concrete stuff that we were just looking at. It at least has picked up some of the cues from the surrounding buildings, but not quite enough. Although that said, you know, if we saw this in isolation, if we were in a town that didn't have anything like that in it, then this set of buildings would actually do quite nicely. And I should say also that another cue that they have picked up here is the pastel colours, which actually manages to maintain the continuity of the row of buildings here. And we didn't even notice this from that end, so it's certainly not spoiling the view. Something very cosy about this alley here. I wonder if that's a street or no, that's probably the courtyard of a hotel. I was wondering if we could go in there, but perhaps not. Wow, look at that. Some kind of bandstand here. So much decoration here. Absolutely stunning. These wonderful Baroque designs. And with its own mini bandstand on top. Amazing. Well, I really could spend all day just exploring this town in Street View. And the video is going to have to come to an end at some point. But then again, we're still having a great time here, I think. And we haven't been over in this direction at all. And wait, this is Karlovy Vary. That is maybe the actual historic centre. That's maybe where all of the baths are, so having said that we were coming to an end, I think that this is in fact going to be a double episode after all. Although as a matter of fact, this video has probably run to the length of 2 episodes already. I'm going to try something different here. I'm just going to carry on recording and exploring until I feel that we've exhausted the place. Perhaps this can be a model for a future live stream if one day this channel ever grows a following. Just taking our time to really get to know a place. little bit of a different sort of a flavour here, a bit of tropical flavour with the palm trees. And look at this forest of windows here. Fantastic to see the way that these wonderful buildings are all at slightly different elevations climbing up the hillside, and yet we can imagine we've got street after street there of just stunning architecture. All right, now, this is incredible. We were fiddling around over in the west of the town, thinking how stunning it was, and we weren't even in the main core of the spa. Look at that. Half timbered with extra decoration in between. Really lovely. And then, harkening back to the Roman baths, this fabulously colonnaded arcade here. And we've actually got a river in between us. We can't really tell from the coverage here, but because we're, rather than being up on a car, as the camera usually is, we are down at pedestrian level, because this of course is a pedestrianised area, but knowing that the river there is also very much adding to the beauty of this scene. I was just looking to see if we had any other dates that we could explore in this coverage, but we don't, because I was hoping to see these buildings without the scaffolding on them, but we can't on this occasion. And I've just spotted over here, it's this set of buildings that I actually saw a photograph of that made me want to explore this town, so I'm really pleased that we've come across that area, because I was starting to think that we might not do that, I might have missed it somehow. Yeah, shame about the scaffold in this coverage. I really want to get onto the bridge over here. Can we get over to the other side? Yes, we can. Well, here we can get a bit of a sense of how this might have looked without the scaffold. Some much older coverage. No, wait, February 23. This is more recent coverage even, but poor camera quality. Well, we'll just have to take what we've got here. Stunning. Just stunning. And that's the first building we've seen that has actually resembled a church. That may be the first church we've seen. Perhaps unusual not to have come across a church just yet in such a long time. And at what point, I wonder, will we pop out onto the better quality coverage just now? Here we are. Incredible. It's just saturated with incredible buildings. I can scarcely believe it. Okay, we're going to come back and explore up in the hills, but I did just want to get back over here, I think, and head down this street. Beautiful sunny day. We might have to pop out at the end of the street, maybe get onto this main road. It may be that they severely limit the amount of cars that they let go into this part of the town, especially given that it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So perhaps Google didn't even get permission to drive a car down here to record it, which is why we've got this not so great camera quality. It had to be a camera that wasn't so big that it couldn't be carried by a person. And I'm just wondering about the steam rising here, if that's what it is. Could it really be that this is a hot spring right here in the middle of the town? I mean, the town is named after the baths after all, but are we literally seeing steam rising from the water, I wonder? And here we go, some better camera quality, which is really getting us a better view of these buildings. Look at the gorgeous tile work here. There's no way around it. I'm simply going to have to visit this town. So grand, such a grand building. And this is where you'd get a fantastic view of more of the same from out of your window. I love the aesthetic cohesion on display here. This might all have been designed at the same time, I wonder. No, in fact, there are differences. My eye is being fooled by the consistency of the colours that we see here, but actually we've got these domed tops here, then these more kind of bulky, self-assured tops over here, which are rhyming with those, and then these more almost Dutch style gables on top over here. Truly remarkable. And another pretty church here. I wonder if the hot springs make this area unnaturally warm, which is why the palm trees are able to be grown here. And really beautiful to see these hills up close and how rocky they are. Now we seem to be on the road out of town here. Maybe we'll just drop into one of these upper levels on the hill here. Let's take a look. Not quite such a density of buildings up here, but they are all rather beautiful. Ooh, now take a look at that. Quite a bit newer, 1906. Nonetheless, some lovely brickwork there, some timbers. Really lovely. And we're getting up into the misty hills here. These are great too. A very different style to the other buildings that we've been seeing elsewhere. Wanted to get a better look at that particular part there, but it's shrouded in leaves. Yeah, really lovely. This is perhaps more representative of the vernacular style of architecture that you would see in other parts of the Czech Republic. The pastel colours again. Let's maybe jump to over here. Very inviting, this foliage surrounded road. Taking us up to a huge hotel with some neatly manicured grounds. Wonderful. The tennis courts. And how about this corner over here? And we've got a great view from here of all the rooftops that we can see, and indeed some of the facades from lower down. I'll just take a moment to scan through those. Don't know if I spotted this earlier, but that's just wonderful, isn't it? The turret, surrounded by the trees. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's a delight. It's a true delight, this town. Lovely to see the rooftops peeking through there. We'll avoid the bins. And that might be as far as we can go on this path. And I'm just going to pop out into the map, because I'm beginning to think that we may have seen almost everything that Karlovy Vary has to offer. No doubt there will have been some particular side streets that I've missed, but I think it's been a fairly comprehensive exploration, if I do say so myself. And I think this is the scenery that I would like to leave you with. This has probably turned out to be the longest street aesthete video that I've ever made. Usually I split them into 20-minute chunks, give or take. So thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video with me. Since you've made it this far, why not subscribe? I've been immensely impressed with this town, Karlovy Vary, and I've got a huge list of very beautiful places all over the world that I'm looking to explore on this channel, so do stay with me for more. And if you've enjoyed the music that you've been hearing in this video, then I hope you'll take a look at my first channel, which is where I upload all of my original music.